John Zogby. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Bill.
Great to hear from you. The numbers out. I found some of these numbers to be a little bit surprising. Mm-hmm. But when we start out with Trump's approval rating is down.
It is. Yep, it's down. Actually, right about where the national average is, about 42% approval rating. That's down about 3 points from the last Zogby poll, and just about that from the average of national polls. It's low, and especially low for the end of a honeymoon period, which really was never much of a honeymoon period.
What about the people that are? I mean, there's people that maybe I don't know if you've asked these questions, but that do you agree with President Trump's policies? Do you disagree with President Trump's policies? But then there are those that strongly agree and strongly disagree. Did you differentiate between those?
Yeah, and even more so than in the case of Barack Obama, where the intensities were great on both sides. They're even more intense on Trump's side. So very little in the middle. Very few people somewhat approve or somewhat disapprove. You really find that the very much approve and very much disapprove are substantially higher. We are really polarized.
Yeah. I want to get to polarized in a second. I want your opinion on health care. Before we get to that, the surprise out of this polling is a particular demographic. Yeah,
and to be honest with you, I'm not particularly pleased that the news picked up on that demographic. It's a small demographic, and it in our polls has tended to tilt a little on the conservative side, more so than the mainstream. So I would never lead with it.
Yeah.
But let's just say that there has been some positive movement among Hispanics, and why is that? I don't know. 40% of Hispanics do identify themselves as conservative. The largest growing segment of Hispanics in this country identify themselves as evangelicals. So we do know that there's that movement. But at the same time, when they hear Donald Trump or when they feel that they are being attacked as a community, then you find them tilting all the way over on the other side. So let's call this one a surprising finding, but I wouldn't hang my hat on it.
Yeah, all right. And healthcare, I'm surprised that they are going with a vote today. But my philosophy on this, and I'd like your opinion, is with the Freedom Caucus ideology. There's no changing. It's all or nothing. We believe this way, and that's why we're here. The moderates, the rest on the Republican side, not so much, and probably care about their upcoming election, and also I think are willing to cut a deal. So if you look at it that way, this thing the repeal could pass today.
It could, and I think what's driving it is the internal dynamic within the House Republican majority. The Freedom Caucus has a stranglehold. If they don't get what they want, then that jeopardizes the capacity for the Trump administration to get a whole bunch of other things like infrastructure and tax cuts and so on. And so the driving force here is to get this thing out of the House. There will be reconciliation in the Senate, which will modify the bill. It won't please the Freedom Caucus, but at least they get to wring their hands and say, all right, look, we took care of this. Now let's move on to the rest of the agenda. If this doesn't pass, or if it hadn't passed, let's say, then that would have made it almost impossible for any other of the initiatives.
The problem here is there are elements of this that people on both sides of the aisle really like. Preexisting conditions. I don't know where that's going to be in this bill. And the other thing is things like having your children on your insurance until the age 26. That could go away here.
That could go away. The preexisting conditions that has been probably the most popular element of Obamacare. And the obvious difficulty there is now according to this plan anyway, they would be put into high-risk pools and get insurance, unsubsidized insurance, number one, but also, number two, at a much, much higher rate, which was one of the problems that Obamacare sought to address, and one of the reasons why this provision in Obamacare was the most popular in it. So, CBO, as far as we know, they haven't done a more recent analysis, but the last iteration of the bill, 24 million people go off health insurance, and that's not a solution.
Finally, if this does happen, and it does pass the Senate, it is no longer Obama's. It's now President Trump's health care. You could call it Trump care, and it's owned by the Republicans. So that's a little. I think that's got people a little nervous at this point.
It should. If you're looking at 2018, then that's pretty much all they ever do look at is the next election. It could jeopardize some very close seats. Meanwhile, the Democrats are touting the what they're calling the Democratic budget as a way of showing that they can actually do the governing in this country.
Very interesting. It's ZogbyAnalytics.com. And as always, John, we appreciate your insight. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, John Zogby. Quick break.